In this video, let's talk about parental sponsorship in the year 2021. But before I move forward, please subscribe to our channel and enable notifications. When you immigrate to Canada, you could pick from 3 available options, assuming you qualify for one of them: family reunification, economic immigration, and refugees. Today, we are going to talk about family reunification. About 1/3 of people who immigrate to Canada, they immigrate under family reunification. The majority of those people are spouses or common law partners of Canadian citizens or permanent residents of Canada. But probably the most popular immigration option under family reunification is parental sponsorship. However, there's so much opposition towards parental sponsorship. That's why the government puts a cap on parental sponsorship applications. For example, in the year 2020, they only allowed 10,000 applicants to apply for parental sponsorship. In 2021, the government intends to accept 30,000 applications. This means that at one point in the near future, they will open online applications. You submit your request or expression of interest, and then they will select 30,000 people by way of draw, and it's just like a lottery system, and eventually those people could apply for sponsoring their parents or grandparents to Canada. In a parental sponsorship application, we have a sponsor and one or more applicants. Let's first focus on the sponsor. The sponsor in parental sponsorship is someone who meets all these requirements. The person is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident of Canada. That person resides in Canada and he or she is at least 18 years old. Also, a person who files for parental sponsorship as a sponsor needs to accept a 20-year undertaking. I will explain undertaking later on in this video. That person must also have or show that they meet the minimum necessary income. I will talk about minimum necessary income as well. On top of that, this person cannot be any of the following that I mentioned. For example, this person cannot be under a removal order, whether it's that removal order is enforceable or not enforceable. That person cannot be at the time of sponsorship in a reformatory, in a jail, or similar facilities. That person who is the sponsor cannot be an undischarged bankrupt. Certain criminal convictions towards family members, domestic abuse, sexual criminal convictions, and similar criminal convictions could make a sponsor ineligible to sponsor their parents or grandparents to Canada. A sponsor cannot owe the government of Canada money. For example, if in the past they came as refugees to Canada and the government paid for refugee application and the resettlement to Canada, they need to pay the government back. Or if they owe the government money from their previous undertakings, they need to pay the government back before being able to apply for a sponsorship of their parents or grandparents. Also, you need to know that the sponsor cannot be in receipt of social assistance. Let's talk about the qualifications of a sponsor in more details. The first thing is obvious: being Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada, being at least 18 years old and residing in Canada. In terms of residency in Canada, obviously the address of the sponsor needs to be somewhere in Canada. They need to show indications that they actually live in Canada. Physical presence obviously is the main element of residency in Canada, and also long absentees from Canada could be an indication that the person is not residing in Canada. The definition of residency is relatively complex. In certain situations, it's difficult to understand whether you're a resident of Canada or not. Please get in touch with a professional and ask them whether you are actually considered a resident or not. But simply put, if you currently live in the United States or another country and you want to sponsor your parents to Canada, this is not an option. In terms of minimum necessary income, the government looks into your income in the past 3 consecutive years. In other words, for somebody who applies in 2021, we are looking at your income in year 2020, in year 2019, and in year 2018. The way that you can calculate it is to look at your notice of assessment, and line 150 of your notice of assessment reflects your income. You cannot refer to any other document other than your notice of assessment or option C printout, which is basically the same as notice of assessment. Unfortunately, you cannot rely on your pay stubs or other sources of income. Exactly line 150 of your notice of assessment. There is a table for minimum necessary income. You can take a look at this table now, and as you can see, this table is based on the number of members of the family unit. What do I mean by family unit? It means you, your spouse or common law partner, and your dependent children. On top of that, if you have a previous undertaking or current undertaking, you need to add those numbers to the calculations, and obviously the number of people you are sponsoring to Canada. So let's say you are married and you have a 5-year-old, then your family is 3 people, and if you're sponsoring your mother and father, then you are adding 2 more people. So the size of family is 5, assuming that you do not have any previous undertakings that is still valid, or you are not sponsoring the parents of your spouse at the same time. In this situation, you need to look at the table of M&I that I have posted here, and I will also post the link below this video, and compare your line 150 of your income with the minimum necessary income posted for that specific number of family members. If your income for any of those 3 years falls below the minimum necessary income, then you cannot, unfortunately, sponsor your parents or grandparents unless there are significant humanitarian and compassionate considerations, which I will discuss later during this video. In terms of people who do not have enough money, but their spouse or common law partner also makes enough income, in those situations, you can combine the income of yourself and your spouse or common law partner. Having said that, obviously your common law partner or spouse needs to give consent to that, because they will share the undertaking with you, which I will discuss undertaking later on during this video. Remember that nobody other than your spouse or common law partner can be your co-signer, and your spouse and common law partner must also meet all the requirements for a typical sponsor. So if your spouse or common law partner, for example, is not a Canadian citizen or permanent resident of Canada, or they are an undischarged bankrupt, issues like that, unfortunately, your spouse or common law partner could also not be your co-signer. You cannot have your brothers or sisters or uncles or aunts or friends as a co-signer. Only your spouse or common law partner. Undertaking means that from the day that your parents or grandparents become permanent residents of Canada and their family members become permanent residents of Canada, for 20 years, they cannot use social assistance. Social assistance is defined under Section 2 of the Immigration Regulations. Let me read that definition for you. Social assistance means any benefit in the form of money, goods, or services provided to or on behalf of a person by a province under program of social assistance, including a program of social assistance designated by a province to provide for basic requirements, including food, shelter, clothing, fuel, utilities, household supplies, personal requirements, and health care not provided by public health care, including dental care and eye care. In other words, if your parents and grandparents use public health care, that's okay. But if there is a service that is not covered by public health care, then that is considered social assistance. Using the services of food bank is considered social assistance, and also referring to the province for monthly social welfare payments is considered social assistance. If your parents or grandparents within those 20 days use social assistance, then that's the money you owe to the government of Canada and you have to pay them back. If you recall, I also told you there are certain issues that a sponsor cannot have. And those issues, I just repeat them, include that being under a removal order. This means a departure order or an exclusion order or a deportation order. If you're not familiar with the concept of removal orders, I will post a link below this video. You can read the article about removal orders. Of course, you cannot be in a jail, you cannot use social assistance as a sponsor. However, if you're using social assistance because of disability, that's okay. So services like ODSP are okay, but social assistance other than disability, they are not okay, and you cannot sponsor your parents or grandparents. In terms of criminal history, if a person has criminal history, you need to consult with a lawyer or an immigration consultant to see if that specific criminal history prevents you from sponsoring your parents or grandparents. In certain situations, if you already have received record suspension or 5 years has passed since the criminal history, you could still qualify to sponsor your parents or grandparents, but make sure to discuss this topic, which is a complex topic, with a professional before submitting your application for sponsorship. In terms of being bankrupt, if you are considered an undischarged bankrupt, you cannot sponsor your parents or grandparents. I highly recommend, if you have bankruptcy issues, talk to a bankruptcy professional to see if you're considered a discharged bankrupt or an undischarged bankrupt. Because if you're a discharged bankrupt or you have never filed for bankruptcy, then you may sponsor your parents or grandparents. We talked about the sponsors, that's enough. Let's talk about the applicant. In the application process, we have a principal applicant and some accompanying family members. So we have principal applicant and accompanying family members or non-accompanying family members. The principal applicant could be either your father or mother or your grandfather or your grandmother. If you're sponsoring both of your parents and they're still married, then you need to pick one of those to be the principal applicant. It doesn't matter which one you pick, but generally speaking, pick the one that has less complexities in their lives to be this main applicant. And the other person becomes the accompanying family member. If your parents have already divorced and they are remarried, in that situation, you can still sponsor them, but remember now you are dealing with two families. So we have the family of your mother and her accompanying family members, and the family of your father and their accompanying family members. Obviously, in this situation, you have increased the number of people you are sponsoring. This means that your income needs to be a lot more to meet the minimum necessary income. Other than being your parents or grandparents to be the principal applicant, your parents or grandparents cannot be inadmissible to Canada because of any reasons that are defined under sections 33 to 43 of the Immigration Act, such as security issues, human rights violations, criminality, serious criminality, organized criminality, medical issues, financial issues, and so on and so forth. So you have to be careful with inadmissibility issues as well. If you are in doubt, get in touch with a professional. If the principal applicant has family members, then the inadmissibility of those family members could also affect the application of the principal applicant and make them inadmissible to Canada. In terms of family members, we are talking about the spouse or common law partner of the principal applicant and also their children who are normally under 22 years old. I don't want to go into the details of the family members because that's a very, very long topic. I have an article about who is a family member in an application to Canada. I will post the link below this video. Sometimes when you're sponsoring your parents or grandparents, either you as the sponsor or them as the applicants do not meet certain requirements of the Immigration Act. In that situation, sometimes you could apply under humanitarian and compassionate considerations. This means that you submit extra documents to convince the officer that Section 25 sub 1 of the Act applies to them. And if the officer agrees with you, they could issue permanent residence despite the fact that either the sponsor or the applicants do not meet the requirements of the Act. Having said that, HNC is a complex process and discretionary. Make sure to consult with a professional regarding that issue. You do have the right to appeal the refusal of a sponsorship application of your parents or grandparents. This means that if the officer refuses the application, within 30 days of receiving the refusal letter, you can file for appeal to the Immigration Appeal Division. In certain situations, you do not qualify to appeal. For example, if the applicant is inadmissible on security grounds, on human rights violations, on serious criminality, or on organized criminality. Also, at the time of application, if either the sponsor or the applicants misrepresent, then suddenly the right of appeal disappears. However, you may still file for judicial review to the Federal Court of Canada. For judicial review, you need to hire a lawyer. But for appeal cases, you can hire also immigration consultants like me. Thank you very much for watching this video. My name is Parsai. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant with 10 years of experience under my belt. Yes, I have represented many clients to immigration authorities under sponsorship applications and other types of applications, and I have actually dealt with Immigration Appeal Division cases as well. I'm the author of the bestseller book, 88 Tips on Immigration to Canada. You can find out about your purchasing options by visiting 88tips.ca. I'm an instructor at Ashton College. I teach immigration consulting. Please subscribe to this channel, enable notifications, like this video, and share it with your friends. See you soon.